What is up, guys? I do hope you're well. My name is Mark, and today we're back with some more /Entitled Parents. If you're new here, please consider hitting that like, that subscribe, and maybe that notification bell too. And a huge thank you to the members of our channel. 3 new members yesterday. I don't know why, you crazy people, but I love you still. Thank you to Lady Mythos, Crystal Shield, and of course, Miss Lucid Dreams. A couple of people have been questioning the whole membership thing, so I'll leave a comment in the description below, just so you understand it a bit more. I've been having an absolute blast reading these stories the last couple of days, and your likes and comments have blown my mind and inspired me to keep creating more. Thank you so much for that, and let's get on with today's stories. Much love, guys. Our first story comes from Just Ting Things. EM tried to hoard Costco toilet paper and gets just desserts. Longtime fan of this sub, was too busy to post until now. Events happening during the height of crazed toilet paper famine around 2 weeks later after Chinese New Year. My mum, MM, and I were going to get supplies to find that the toilet paper section has been picked clean. Not a big deal, we didn't have high hopes anyway. We wandered over to the checkpoint when suddenly we spot EM. EM and son have two shopping carts filled with toilet paper, one hand pushing the cart and the other holding her phone, gossiping away. Now, it is important to mention that my mother is usually an anxious, quiet woman, living as a Chinese-speaking immigrant in a white American neighbourhood. She's gotten even more nervous during the coronavirus. However, realising that the woman is just jabbering on the phone in Chinese, her face lights up. Sorry for the rough translations. My mum, in Chinese: "Hello miss, I wish you a happy new year. It's so nice to see you in our community. I'm sure you didn't get a chance to see, but there is a 1 toilet paper package per customer. Easy mistake, but let's band together to work hard for our community. We must take care of each other." EM, not bothering to put down the phone, just basically yells, "Huh? You're talking to me? Mind your own business, bitch. If you're too stupid to take advantage, don't whine. Don't pretend we're friends, just because you're too fat to waddle your way over to the toilet paper aisle." EM proceeds to gently shove our cart with hers and cut in front of us in the line. At this point, my mum is flushed with embarrassment and quietly shuffles into the long checkout line. Approximately 45 minutes later, EM reaches the checkout. The overworked clerk just sighs. The clerk says, "Mum, it's a 2 per people rule. I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to put all of them back and get into the back of the line." EM says, "What? Says who? There aren't signs anywhere. No one says anything. If you have a rule, tell people. Don't just make it up and cheat your paying customers." C just sighs and begins to take her carts away, much to EM's squawking. He starts waving the customers in line over to scavenge from the pile. My mum shuffles over a bit. She looks EM dead in the eye and, without blinking, plucks the shiniest toilet paper roll of the bunch. In a stroke of either pettiness or awkward pointlessness, MM says a common Chinese New Year's phrase, in Chinese: "May peace bring wealth to you." We quickly scuttle away from EM's wrath with her prized toilet paper. To this day, my mum denies any sort of pettiness sentiment, and simply states she was being polite to a neighbour. Your mum was definitely being petty. there was a little like malicious compliance in there as well. I can just picture the grin on your mum's face. Sleepy Ginger Sleep. Entitled mother allows her precious baby to steal our cat. My family and I moved back to my home country, New Zealand, a few years ago and brought all our animals. One of our cats became an outdoor cat and wandered to all of the neighbourhood's gardens, but she would always come back at home at night. One night we noticed that she didn't come back, but we thought it was a fluke. One night became 1 week, and by then we had already called around our close neighbours and had printed out posters. One day walking home from school, my sister saw her in a neighbour's window and called our parents. My mother and I went to their home and confronted them about it. Our neighbours consisted of 1 mother, 1 father and a little girl, about 7 years old. Apparently what had happened was she wandered into their garden. The neighbour's daughter managed to catch her and wanted to keep her, despite the obvious collar. The parents allowed her to keep our cat and replaced her collar. When my mother demanded that they give her back, our neighbour obviously refused and tried to twist the story and make it our fault because we didn't offer to sell our cat when we moved in. I don't even know how a person can be that delusional. The mother claimed that it was unfair to her precious baby that we didn't offer to give them our cat because her daughter was younger than my sister and I. She said that our cat and her child had formed a bond, blessed by God. I had had enough and called our cat, and the second she appeared I grabbed her and ran away. The mother and child started to scream like banshees, so my mother followed after me. When the neighbour called the police and demanded that we give her back, they forgot the fact that microchips exist, and that was all the proof the police needed to see that she was ours. We did tell our neighbours who have cats to make sure to watch out for them. And there is the top tip. Always get your pet microchipped, because if there's a Karen about, you're going to lose your pet. Our next story is from Vivid Ray. EM calls police on my daughter for not playing with her daughter. This is my first time posting. We'll try to keep this story short and to the point, but there does have to be some backstory for context. Here we go. This happened about 12 years ago. I just moved to a small town. My 10-year-old daughter made friends with a girl down the block. The girl didn't have many friends because her mum was drama and nobody in the neighbourhood wanted to deal with her. I didn't want to punish the EM's daughter for her mum's behaviour, and our daughters were thick as thieves in no time. About 6 months later, my daughter comes home from their house crying, apparently over an argument over who got to play with what Barbie. The other girl called my daughter a racial slur. When my daughter became quite visibly upset, the girl told my daughter something to the effect of, "It's not a bad thing, it's just what mum says you and your mum are. When you act like you're better than us, just stop acting better and you won't be a racial slur." The EM called pretty quickly to apologise for her daughter, talking out of turn and sharing personal family conversations. I explained to her that I was still okay with the girls being friends, as long as the four of us could have a sit down and just kind of talk through why that word would be so hurtful to my kid. She agreed, but made comments that made me feel like she thought I was overreacting. At the end of our conversation, I made it very clear our daughters would not be around each other until the sit down happened. EM snaps, "This is what's wrong with you people, always playing the race card and making a mountain out of a molehill. You aren't going to punish my daughter because you can't get over yourself." I hung up, and that was the end. Or so I thought. 1 month later, my daughter was at the park down the street from our house with a neighbour and her kids. I'm cleaning my house when I got a phone call from the neighbour, entitled Mum EM, me, neighbour N, police officer PO, commanding officer CO. You know it's going to get spicy when there's a police officer. The neighbour says, "Oh my god, EM is here. She is screaming that the kids can't ignore her at a public place. By law, they have to play with their daughter. I'm packing up and coming back. Just letting you know that this bitch is acting nuts." I said, "Do you need me to come?" Neighbour said, "Nah, I'm ignoring her. We'll be home in a sec." 2 minutes later, I got another call and can hear screaming in the background. Neighbour said, "You won't freaking believe this. She called the police on your daughter. The cops are here. You need to get down here." I arrive and my daughter is shaking and crying, thinking she has done something wrong. EM is screaming like a mad woman at the top of her lungs about how my daughter being in a public place means she has to play with her daughter. EM said, "So what are you going to do about this? Are you seriously just going to let this girl stay at the park when she is refusing to play with my daughter?" The police officer said, "Mum, I'm sorry, but as I was saying, there is no law that kids have to play with each other in public parks. If she doesn't want to play with your daughter, she doesn't have to." EM grabs at the walkie-talkie thing on the cop's shoulder. "I want to speak with your sergeant or commanding officer or whatever. Someone needs to come do their freaking job." The officer called his commanding officer. I was stunned. I asked her if my daughter could sit in my car, and she was visibly shaken. He said she could, which of course sent EM on another rant. The CO pulls up. She is screaming about how my daughter needs to get out of the car and play with her child. CO comes and the officer is trying to explain to him what's going on, and she is screaming a foot away. He comes over to me and I tell him the backstory on how this all started. CO to me, "At this point, I don't see a reason for you to still have to be here. You can take your daughter home." EM is turning bright red. "This is why they are like this. Nobody holds them accountable for anything they do. She should at least get a ticket or something." I don't know what all was said after that. Me, the neighbour, and our kids got out of there quick. I did start looking for an apartment right away and found something 2 months later. While I was packing, I got a call from EM. I let it go to voicemail. "I hear you're moving. I just wanted to know if you or any of your kids walked by my house before then, I'm calling the police for harassment. I don't care if it's James," my son that was 2 at the time, "and I can't wait to hear what stupid shit you have to say about this when you call me back." I'm not gonna lie, I was tempted to call back but didn't. We moved a week later, thankfully. I'm sending this from my phone, so please forgive any grammar/spelling issues. Edit, I'm not trying to make this super long. I don't know why the police did nothing, but they never did. She called them often, on everyone and anyone. They always basically just apologised, calmed her down and left. When I say it's a small town, it is less than 10,000 people and has a lot of farms. So much so that the high school literally has a "bring your tractor to school day." I heard stories about her kids being wild at school, hitting teachers, biting, spitting, and they would just get sent home. I can't say it's fact, but it came from my kids and other kids in the area. As horrible as this is going to sound, I think the whole town collectively decided to turn our backs on all of them to not have to deal with her. From the police to schools to the parents. This is just screaming out mental issues at me. There's no way someone can act like that and not have some issue in their head. But teaching your kids racial stuff like that, man, just my mind. Every time I read something like that, a bit of my brain just melts out the side of my ear. It's just horrible. Our next story is from Amacida. Ian tries to get me to give my Easter basket to her kids. I live in an apartment complex with my boyfriend. I work overnight, so usually I'm asleep during most of the day. Yesterday my boyfriend went out and bought stuff to make up an Easter basket for me, something we did for each other last year, but hadn't really talked about doing this year because of the pandemic. He did set the basket up and left it in the passenger seat of my car for me to find when I went to work. This morning I got home around 7:30 and I was walking through the parking lot. A couple of neighbourhood kids were playing outside. I'm pretty sure they're brothers, as I always see them together, and I passed them to go upstairs while carrying my basket. The basket itself is a pink wicker basket. Had a small pink stuffed bunny, a giant lollipop set, a chocolate bunny, and plenty of coloured eggs in it. I just had to take a melatonin and put my sleep mask on to try to go to bed when I hear a knock at my door. My boyfriend is fast asleep, so I figured I might as well look through the peephole to see if it was an Amazon delivery or something. I peek through and see my neighbour from over the stairs, so I open it up. The two boys from earlier were by the door, watching our conversation. EM said, "My boy said you had an Easter basket." I said, yeah? So EM just says, "Okay, so give it to them." I'm sorry? Give them the Easter basket. You're an adult. Why do you even have one? I'm not going to give your boys my Easter basket. Well, why not? Do you hate Jesus or something? I stood there for a second with a confused look on my face before she snapped. Give them the basket already. I said, "Look, I've lived here for almost a year. I see your kids all the time and I've never really interacted with them, but they seem like fine kids. Even if that is true though, I don't have to give them anything. Especially not something that was given to me as a gift. If they want Easter baskets and you want them to have Easter baskets, why don't you buy the supplies and make them up yourself?" EM said, "Why should I have to do that when there's one already made up here?" I said, "Bitch, because it isn't yours." EM said, "Well, I'm sure I get much better use if my boys have it rather than you. Hand it over or I'm going to call the police and tell them some girl from apartment number stole their baskets." I said, "You might think it'd get more usage from your boys than it will from me, but it's all sweets that I'm going to eat to keep me awake during my 12-hour shift tonight, the one that I need to go to sleep before, if you would leave me be. Also, I even still have the basket I got from him last year, and I'll let you in on a secret. It holds all my sex toys. Happy Easter." After that, I closed the door in her face. I could hear her through the door give one of those partial groan, partial screams, and she actually called the police on speaker right outside my door. So I called the non-emergency line and said if a woman called someone from address stealing her kid's Easter basket, that she was delusional, and told them what happened. Police haven't showed up, and now it's time for me to snooze. Happy Easter all. Our next story is from Lazuli73 from the Daddy Cringe subreddit. Post your stories there. Karen of the COVID Co-op. She reiterates what our Aunt Lazzie again with another tale of life in a world where people don't know how to do an adult. This time, we're stepping out of bounds of pizza joint and retelling a tale brought to me briefly this fair morn through my sister. My sister and I don't get along most of the time. We hardly tolerate each other, but that's neither here nor there. But this morning she recounted a second-hand Karen story that I knew would fit perfectly here. Mind you, this is technically third-hand, as it would be a best friends encounter, not my sister's, and I only know the basic details, so take it with a grain of salt and some artistic liberty. My sister's friend, who I refer to as C, started working at our hometown grocery store, again recently due to the short staffing because of everyone's favourite airborne virus. A lot of businesses in my region where customers are still allowed to browse the store have protective screens shielding the cashier from your moist, disgusting, I have no idea where your breath has been. At this grocer, they are heavy stands of plexiglass. C was set as a till, checking out customer after customer in the endless monotony and sheeple falling for toilet paper means hoarding non-perishables like the era of Mad Max was just about to break the horizon line. Now, I'm not 100% sure of this, as it could be an actual law, but it's definitely an unwritten pandemic etiquette rule. But for the most part, you're only supposed to go to the store if you need to. If you're only there for anything non-essentials, you're an arsehole. Think things like junk food, pop, sweets, salty snacks, crisps/chips, chocolate, and pleasure items like makeup. Anything in that realm. If you don't need it to survive, you don't need to skip down to the local supermarket to satiate your need to stuff your face with gas station gourmet. That doesn't stop people though, the kind that are either so selfish, so stupid, or so high and mighty that they play their part in the pandemic doesn't matter to them. So there C was, doing her job, checking out customers with cartfuls of food, and yes, toilet paper, until the harmony was disturbed. Karen. Now, like I said, this is a third-party story. I have no idea what this woman actually looked like, so let's say she was a walking stereotype for shiggles and gits. The hair, the clothes, the sunglasses, the resting bitch face that gives her a forehead crease like a butt crack and lips like a puckered anus off a dog. This shining example of how to human sauntered up to the register, her only spoils of having to suffer the shopping trip being a cheap, store-brand frozen pizza. No other food, no medicine or toiletries, just a frozen pizza. Something she could absolutely live without, and it won't even be that good, trust me, I know my pizza. So when our delightful Karen was finally to be served by C tried to greet her kindly. She barely got half a word out. Again, since this isn't my tale from retail, I'll be paraphrasing as I have no idea what actual words used. C said, "Hello," and was cut off. "You're supposed to change your gloves for every customer." She says that with an attitude that could curdle milk and probably snap off a gum she was chewing like a cow's cud. Maybe she was just trying to emulate her favourite farm animal since they could relate so much. C was sputtering a little because she was caught off guard by this unprovoked rudeness. "I'm sorry, but I was told by my supervisor that I don't need to change my gloves for every customer." Karen says, "Yes you do, it's law." C reiterates what her supervisor told her and that she won't be changing her gloves unless told by someone with authority over her. Well, this simply won't do in Karen's world. C reaches for Karen's purchase and Karen stops her, claiming she doesn't want her touching it because she's refusing to change her gloves. Well, clearly they've reached an impasse. C can't do her job and check out Karen if she can't touch her food, and Karen won't leave without her shitty pizza. What's Karen's solution? Karen says, "If you won't change your disgusting gloves, then I'll just wring myself out." I assume that Karen starts to manoeuvre around the till, or maybe try to reach around the plexiglass shield to scan the pizza herself. C stops her, saying that she can't be behind the shield. Keep in mind, this whole time, Karen's getting louder and louder and more indignant. She's screeching, holding up a growingly increasing impatient line, generally making a huge ass of herself. Then she finally says the line, "I want to speak to your manager." Now, I don't specifically recall what happened after Karen played her trump card, but I do know that she went on a massive tirade, just going unjustifiably off about how the store lines were too slow, too long, how she was a single mother, and this and that, and woe to Karen. That she was on the phone with C's manager for an hour and a half the other day, trying to have imagined slight righted because reasons. People don't act like this in any situation. You're just as much as a human as the person handling your food/money/service. Be polite, it's not hard. If you need to act like you're taking 40 years too long to grow up, you're going to end up on Reddit. Yeah, sometimes the person flubs up, but again, human. Fucking chill. Most of the time, it was indeed an honest mistake, and it's those honest mistakes seem to keep happening when you're around. Maybe, just maybe, your pissy attitude is the problem. Thank you, Lazuli, once again for sharing your story on our subreddit. Much love to you. This story is from Catfrix. "No, Karen, your kid cannot have my asthma medication. This happened to me today, and I'm still scratching my head for the logic. Mandatory on my phone and non-English speaker disclaimer. Cast me, Karen, and hero bus driver. I'm a 34-year-old Dutch guy with a driver's license. It sucks, but Dutch public transport kinda rocks, so for almost 2 years now, I've been using it to get to my job, and in those 2 years I've never really had a bad experience that doesn't involve a late bus and rain. Until today, that is. Because of the pandemic, bus schedules have been adjusted to once or twice per hour. It is far from ideal, but I understand why. Kids are not going to school, so the bus company would lose money letting empty buses drive. But when it came to the schedule, I drew the short straw. Because if I want to go by bus from home to work, I would be travelling 90 minutes instead of 40, and I would arrive at work 30 minutes earlier than normal. To me, this is not an option, so I decided to cycle to work halfway. That way I cut 30 minutes out of the trip, and I get to work at my normal time. The one problem today is that I am asthmatic, and it'd be quite windy out this morning. So I get to the bus station this morning, already struggling for a breath. I quickly lock my bike and walk towards the terminal, focusing on my breathing. 5 minutes later the bus arrives. I greet the driver and sit down. A minute later our Karen of the story enters the bus. She takes a seat on the row next to mine, and a few minutes later the bus driver starts the bus and off we go. I still feel like I'm struggling for breath, and while coughing I quickly get my inhaler plus chamber out. Assemble it and start using it as I struggle to breathe. It instantly works and I feel precious oxygen enter my lungs. This piques Karen's attention. "What are you doing?" she asks. "Taking my medication. I have asthma, and with this weather it's quite a struggle getting here," I replied. "Does it help with breathing?" she asks, and I nod my head. Well, yes, she extended the E. I have kids at home, and with corona I don't want them to suffocate if they get it, so give me that inhaler. You can get a new one. And she holds out her hand. Oh boy. Not gonna happen, lady, I said in my most dry and mocking tone. I need these meds and they don't help corona. I don't care, give it here, she says as she thrusts her hand out again. My kids need it more. I again tell her no and put my medication in my backpack and try to put on my headset. This is where Karen goes full EP and grabs my backpack and starts going through it. Luckily the hero bus driver was paying attention and we all lurch forwards as he hits the brakes. He stops the bus, stands up, and his best drill instructor voice says, "Lady, give the man his backpack back, now." There was absolutely no doubt of authority in his voice, and the lady turns tomato red as she hands back the backpack. I thought that was it. Oh boy, was I wrong. I'm not going to type this in caps, but our hero yelled every word. Why on earth would you think that someone's asthma medication would help against corona? Besides, you saw the man use it. What if he has the virus but didn't get sick? Also, he used it. You a gross lady. Get off the bus, now. The lady looks like a deer in the headlights, but doesn't move. Get off, now, hero yells again. Finally, lady got up and out of the bus. I thanked our hero bus driver as he sits back down, and we get on our way again. As the bus drives off, I saw the lady on her phone. No assaults, no police, destruction of property, so it could have been much worse. Still, I wish I could tell this Karen. Too bad we weren't out of the city yet, you disgusting bitch. Thank God for hero bus drivers everywhere. Our next story is from Orlando Aguilar. EM attempts to hit my mum at Burger King, gets stopped by me and my brother, and then gets kicked out of the place. So this story happened back in 2012. I tend to have a good memory for details, but since this happened 8 years ago, I don't remember the dialogue exactly as it happened. This story is also pretty short, so there's that. So as I mentioned before, this happened in 2012. I was 15 at the time, and my little brother was 11. We used to live in the US, pretty much in the middle of the country. One random day, my mum picked me and my brother up from our schools and decided to take us to Burger King that was pretty close to where we lived at the time. When we got there, got off the minivan and went inside, and it was pretty empty, maybe 3 or 4 people eating. One guy at the cash register, the cooks, and the manager in the back, and a security guard outside. As soon as we walk up to place our order, in comes the Karen, EM of the story, with a small child, maybe around 5 or 6 years old. Now I mentioned earlier that I have a good memory for details, and this woman made me so enraged that I remember pretty much exactly what she looked like. Blonde, shoulder length hair, with bad highlights, very skinny, wearing a casual business suit with a neon pink shirt underneath, and big ass sunglasses up on her head, and high heels. I swear we hadn't taken more than 10 seconds deciding what to order before she pushed away in front of us and demanded to order first. My mum obviously got angry and told her to wait, but this woman wasn't having it. The wild Karen started straight up screaming at my mother that she deserves to order first, and my mum, while usually the sweetest woman you'll ever meet, is a Latina. Although she doesn't look like it, and as a Latina, what my dad likes to describe as a raging fire of fighting spirit, and wasn't going to let some random woman bully her way into submission. So when Karen realised that my mother wasn't going to back down, she decided to raise her fist in an attempt to hit my mother. Before this, while the screaming fight was going on, my brother was trying to calm my mum down, and I was trying to talk sense into the giant entitled woman baby in front of me. But as soon as we saw that this woman is going to hit our mother, we immediately put ourselves between them, and I raised my hand to catch the woman's fist, and was prepared to fight back, if she has so much as managed to touch my sweet, beautiful mother. At 15 years old, I was about 1.75 meters tall, so not that tall at the time, but definitely big enough so she couldn't get past me. While the fighting was going on, the cashier dude went to the back to get the manager, and the security guard ran in to grab Karen by her arms. The manager proceeded to tell her to leave the premises of the restaurant. The security guard let her go, and she, her poor child, and her giant ass sunglasses left the place. My mum, happy as could be that both her children defended her from what could have been a physical fight, and bragged to all my family and her friends about this. The manager also gave her one of those Hershey cheesecake ice cream pie things that they have, or had, for free for our troubles. At the start of this story, I was thinking, why does there need to be a security guard at Burger King? And then it answers my question. Do they have security guards at all places like that in the US? I'd love to know. Like in our restaurants, there's no... Well, actually, they've had one in our local one actually in Burger King. I forgot about that. Wow. Our next story is from Juiced505. Entitled Dad Shouts at Someone Else's Kid and Says He Needs to Go Back to His Own Country. First, here's some background. I work at a lovely family restaurant.
The staff is super nice and most guests are too, but once in a while you just get one of those people. The family restaurant has 5 different sections and a terrace. This particular story takes place in the section of the restaurant closest to the indoor playground we have. There's 2 tables this night in this section. One of them is a very nice family of 4. The parents are lovely and the kids too, a little boy and a girl. It just so happens that these people seem to have a background of migration. I, the waitress, don't care at all. The little boy and girl went off to play in our playground. The other table, ED, mum, kid and a friend of the parents apparently. They seem very nice, just a little bit caught in the way they spoke. That's fine, nothing to worry about. Their son also went to play in our playground after telling ED what he wants to eat. As they're ordering, the kids have started playing together. All of a sudden we hear some cries and grunts from the playground. One of the boys yells, "Don't hit me!" Mind you, the EK already came out of the playground once because the other boy didn't want to play fight with him. The ED got up faster than I've ever seen anyone do. He barged into the playground, grabbed the other kid and screamed, "Don't you dare hit my child! That they teach you that you can do that in your country doesn't matter, you can't do it here too. If you hit him, I will come here again and hit you so hard you fly back to your country immediately." I just stood there shocked. I have never, ever imagined someone could say that to a child who didn't seem older than 4 years old. The worst part is that the parents of the boy didn't see or hear what happened. The ED walked back to the table, told EK to go and play again and tell him if the other boy does something again. Then, as soon as EK had started playing again, ED settled and huffed to the other people at their table. Fucking foreigners, they should go back to their own country. The 2 women just laughed, as if he made the funniest joke ever. At this point I was still standing there, kind of frozen. I had the menus on my arm, as I had just taken their order. I put down the menus and went to ask the lovely family how their food was. They luckily didn't really seem to be angry. They just told their boy to always be nice to people and that some people never learn from their parents. The way I saw they were bringing up their kids, I cannot imagine that sweet little boy would have just hit EK without a good reason. All I know is that I've never been more disgusted with people like this before, and it gets me angry only thinking about this. Good, the typical racist entitled parent. Wow. Anyway guys, that is it for today's post. If you did enjoy, you know what to do. Please consider hitting that like, that subscribe, and maybe that notification bell too. And don't forget to change it to always, otherwise YouTube won't notify you every time I post a story, just because it's like that, and that's the way it is. Anyway, thank you once again for being here. Much love to you, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye guys.